actually puts the toilet paper under, right? Like you guys don't do that, right? Nobody? If you do, we're going to have prayer for you right up here in the front after service. God's going to work in your life today. It's going to be a good day. My name is Lance. If we haven't had the opportunity to meet before, I'm a friend of LifePoint, a friend of Rusty's, and a lot of the pastors here, and that might answer the question of why they keep bringing me back. Just because I'm friends. Not very good, but I have friends, and so it's good to be here again. It's great to see you guys. I know I've met many faces in here, but there's quite a few new faces as well, which is always good to see. You guys picked a great weekend to be here. I asked Rusty, why did he start this relationship goals series next week? I'm like, next week feels like a great time to start it. He says, because it's Labor Day weekend, and my church is full of sinners, and they're not going to come to church on Labor Day weekend. There's going to be... You laugh because it's true. You're like, I'm going to be on a boat with some sort of blended beverage, and it's going to be delightful. And you know what? We're going to believe for great things next Sunday, too. It's going to be a great Sunday as well. But I would highly encourage you, circle that date on the calendar on the 11th of September. I think it's really going to be a killer series to make sure that you're at. Whether you're in a relationship or hoping to one day have a relationship, I think it's going to be a good series for you guys. I'm married, and I have two little girls. I am a girl dad, full-fledged girl dad. Woo, for the girl dads in the house here, which means my life gets a lot of dresses, and it gets some pretend makeup and a lot of fun. Man, we watch a lot of like animated films too, because my girls are young. And I know what some of you are thinking, you're like anti-screen time parents, and there's a lot of great churches in the area for you that aren't here. And so you have a great time. This is for normal people who are regular and have sanity in their life. And so we do create some margin with screen time every once in a while, and it's a lot of animated fun movies. But once the girls go to bed, there is just that great, I love my kids, but man, when they go to bed, all the parents say amen. It's just that great moment where you can watch a show that you can't watch with your kids around, right? You can watch different things. So we watch shows that involve like murder and stuff, like blood, just horrible things. Once our kids go to bed, it's awesome. So I love like CSI. I love the whodunit shows. I love like Law and Order, all those kind of things. Anybody else? Nope. Okay, great. Just the first two services, all you guys are saved already. And I love that. And then even when I'm in the car by myself, I listen to true crime podcasts. Does anyone else do that? Those true crime podcasts? Online, they're going wild right now in their basement with their yarn on the walls. They're like, yeah, watch true crime too. It's awesome. But I love those kind of things. The problem though, and maybe you're like me after you watch a movie like this or a show like this, is you start to just kind of play mind games a little bit, and you go to the grocery store and you start seeing people as serial killers. Do you guys do that too? You guys do that as it's just me? Yeah, my wife and I are therapists, and so we love the mind game. We love assessing people. If you come out and talk to me in the lobby after, I'm going to try and read your mail, you know what I mean? And be like, oh, you have dad issues. No, I'm just kidding. But no, we like the mind games though, and so we try and assess what's going on. And once I get in that mindset, sometimes I start making assessments of people of whether or not they're a serial killer. And there's some certain things that I know maybe you've done this too. You kind of have your list of things, and some of them are pretty obvious. Come on. If you have a chest freezer in your garage, you're a serial killer. There's no way around it. You say you're a hunter, and we all know what that means, you know what I mean? But it's not like elk in there. We all know we're onto you. And so that was obvious. But there's some really undercover ones that are a little bit sneakier that are just tells. They're tells that you might have that propensity to kill somebody for sport. And here's one of the first ones. You're like, I'm at church? What is this? Play along. And the first one is this. If you put the forks in the dishwasher up instead of down, you're just trying to hurt people. You're trying to hurt people. So you're a serial killer. It's it gets more clean. It doesn't. I've done the research. We've solved it over Google. My wife and I have fought about it. We need the relationship series too. I'll be tuning in online. But if you put them up, you're in trouble. This one's real, and I actually got somebody at the first service, so that was pretty embarrassing. But if you have a dog stroller, you're a serial killer. Nobody's looking in your dog stroller, so there's a body in there, and we all know it's a perfect little getaway. You got it. If you make s'mores and you put your marshmallow in the fire on purpose and watch that thing light up, now I get the incidentals, right? The burning, and you blow it out really quick, and then you just keep toasting it. But if you're the type of person that lights it and then watches it burn, you know who I'm talking about. You're nudging somebody, you're that psycho. And And then you blow it out and it's like charred and gross and it's like a hump of coal and you bite into it like jerky and you're like, I love this. You're a serial killer. Like that is horrible. Ugh. Last one that you know this is to be true, this is probably the most powerful one and personal one to me, is if you put pineapple on pizza, so help me, you are a serial killer. That one always gets people to point to you're that crazy person. I'm just telling you, get the sound equipment ready. There's going to be a Netflix documentary about you one day, and we're going to have called it out. You're going to be a little like blurred out screen, and you're going to be the person like all darked out. I knew the day when I was at church, and they raised their hand. You know, this is going to be it. But I think for all of us, we make these assumptions, we make these characterizations, we start to analyze people based on their personality traits, and we start to categorize people. It's just what our mind does. Our mind does it naturally. You don't even have to try to do it. Our minds start to categorize people based on the mannerisms they have, the actions, the habits, the propensities, their personality type. We start to do this all the time. And one of my favorite categories, this is where we're going to tie in and kind of land with church for a while, is when you say Christian, based on our background, based on the things that come up for you, a different definition comes up for all of us. For some of you, it's a noble definition. It's somebody who you respect, somebody who's generous and kind and loving and empathetic and brings justice and brings grace and brings truth and teaches with wisdom. Like that's what Christian might mean to you based on where you grew up and how you grew up. For some of you, it might mean something totally different, especially in the Pacific Northwest. If you just take a straw poll of people outside of the church, especially on what Christian means, you get some less glamorous definitions. You get judgmental, you get angry, you get hypocritical, you get frustrated. You get the type of people who just think it's on their duty to bring God's wrath to the earth. You think people who are angry, bitter. For some people, you think it's those who are naive. They're just naive enough to believe in a God. Could you believe somebody like that? Come on, they just need a crutch for their life because they can't figure it out on their own. They're not strong enough. They're not smart enough. If they took my class, if they did that thing, if they heard that professor talk, if they watched that YouTube video, that's always my favorite one. I have this YouTube video that disproved God. Did you really? That's fantastic. But come on, that's the definitions I think we get a lot of times around here. But it's interesting for a group of people that are all supposedly believing the same thing. We can get a lot of different ways that we show up. In fact, in this room, for those of us that call ourselves followers of Jesus, we all show up in different ways on how we follow God. And I get some of it is personality driven, but for any of us, shouldn't there be a category? Shouldn't there be indicators or clues, especially like Jesus taught, that there should be things that are compelling about following Jesus? Now, Jesus did this in an amazing way. Obviously, he worked miracles, he healed people, but what's phenomenal is crowds of people would gather just to hear him speak about what following God could be like. And it's amazing. I think we've lost some of that irresistible nature that used to be a part of what being a Christian was all about. And today, if you're here, I want to talk through a few things, whether you're online or in the room, and talk through a few things that I think should categorize a follower of Jesus, that we should be able to be marked by, certain things that should show up in each of us, regardless of where we were raised or what our background is, but how we could show up in a unique way. And I realize, especially with those watching online or in a room like this, it can be daunting to come to church. And for some of you, this might not be a thing that you're bought into yet. That you're saying, yeah, I was promised free childcare or a barbecue or bounce houses for the kids or just something, and that's what got me here. And so I'm not totally convinced on this whole Jesus proposition yet. I'm not totally convinced that I want to be even a Christian. And I think, honestly, you picked a great church to come to begin to explore that, but really a great weekend. Before you check out and think to yourself, okay, this is going to be for all the insiders, I think today could really give you a peek behind the curtain of what it's like to follow Jesus, to answer that skeptical question in your head, like, is this a cult? Like, is this one of those things where we get later in the service and they come down the aisles and pass out like Kool-Aid and crystals and jumpsuits and tambourines? And I get it. That's next Sunday. So next Sunday, you got to make sure you come back. And maybe online you come for the first time. No, come on. That's not the type of church this is. That's not what we believe here. This is a safe place to begin to figure out some of those things, because being recognized as a Jesus follower really is something that was established in the Bible. After Jesus' death and resurrection, we get the book of Acts, which follows around his disciples as they try and start the early church. And here's what we see in the book of Acts, chapter 4, verse 15. If you have notes with you, it came inside the program. You can follow along on those, or you can just read on the screen behind me. Either way, Acts 14:13 says this. Rather, Acts 4:13 says, "Now, as they observed the confidence of Peter and John, two of Jesus' disciples, and understood that they were uneducated and untrained men. Could you imagine that on your tombstone? Here lies an uneducated and untrained man. Like, what a bummer. Yeah, but they didn't have any particular education or training, but they were amazed because they began to recognize them as having been with Jesus. That it wasn't because of their education, it wasn't the way they were raised, it wasn't their background, it wasn't because they were particularly gifted or skilled. In fact, they were maybe the opposite, but still they were recognizable. So for all of us that might feel like we have a narrative as to why we won't be recognized as a Jesus follower, if you knew my past, if you knew my reputation, if you knew my stuff, put that all aside. Because I think for all of us, there's an opportunity to be recognized for something more, something bigger, something really spectacular. And if we get this right, everything could change. Not only in our relationships, not only the way the culture or this community sees our church, but in your own personal life, things could change. So you guys ready? First things first. You guys ready? First point out of 4? That was harsh. That was not what you're looking for. I figured you guys had plenty of caffeine by this morning. You're ready for a barbecue. I get it. Here we go. First point. Being a recognizable Jesus follower, first things, you focus on action steps. Belief is the standard. When you believe, that's the standard. We all get that. Come on, if you take a census, in fact, they already do this. They take a census all around the world of different demographics and backgrounds and personality traits and different hobbies, all these type of things. And one of the questions that they ask is, do you believe in Jesus? And that gets you kind of this inflated, strange number of 2.6 or 2.9 billion people that would say, I'm a Christian. But I think they're asking the wrong question because belief can be confusing because you and I believe some different things. And Jesus never really actually invited people to believe. Believe it or not, Jesus never started there. He asked for something so much bigger. In Matthew 16:24, it says, Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, set aside his pride, all those different things, take up his cross, and follow me. Not believe and not even agree with me, but to follow me. And that's the standard, something bigger, something better than belief, something better than just agreeing with Jesus' teachings, than simply coming to church on a Sunday, even though I'm a big fan of coming to church on Sunday, and agreeing with the things that the communicator would offer forward, agreeing that love is a good thing and peace is possible. I love all those things, but there's something bigger when we choose to follow, because landing at belief, we can do that a number of different ways. Here's a few of them that I've come across as I talk to people as they land on believing something. It's either this, it's through inheritance. When you inherit a belief structure that my grandma prayed for me once when I was a kid, so I guess I'm a follower of Jesus now. That's how it happens. My family has always done this. Maybe my great-great-great-grandpa used to work for the church one day, so our family has always been Christian, so you think it's just inherited. Osmosis, which means you just kind of rubbed off on you. Your neighbor was Ned Flanders, and when you cut him off once, he prayed for you, and so you figure, well, I'm in. Come on, I'm going to heaven. This is awesome. It's just through being around enough people, maybe going to church a few times, that through osmosis, I just become somebody who believes these things. Maybe culture, even though it's less true today, I think our nation is kind of rooted in the fact that if you just culturally become a Christian, it's still true today in many portions of the country, not necessarily in the Pacific Northwest, but a lot of places culturally, it's just, this was born and raised. We all say that we're Christian. Now, we don't really live it out. We don't really go to church, maybe Christmas and Easter, but culturally, we've all kind of agreed to believe these things, and that's important to us. And I think the last one is really where the rubber hits the road. This is where we all start to make tangible change in our life, is when it becomes a personal choice. When it becomes a personal choice, that's when belief starts to change to something bigger, to something better. But even when we've made a personal choice to believe something, it doesn't always get us all the way there, because you and I are both really smart people. We believe and we know a lot of things that don't always play out into our life well. I'll give you an example. I know and I believe quite a few things to be true about nutrition. I believe certain things. I believe my doctor when he says I need to limit certain things that are unhealthy for me. I believe my wife when she's like, hey, that's the 8th bag of chips. You need to put those away and get help. You need, you know what I mean? You need to calm down a little bit. I believe them, but when I go to the grocery store hungry, y'all been to that place? where your beliefs and your knowledge go out the window because it don't matter. As soon as you're walking down the aisle, like, oh my gosh, what, they make double stuffed Oreos? They make triple stuffed Oreos? Might as well try all of them. You know what I mean? Like, is this a different flavor? It's a different thing. Have I not tried this? Have I not experienced this? And all my health goals, aspirations, and knowledge go out the window based on what I'm willing to follow. Same thing goes for your finances. You believe a lot of things to be true about your finances. You got your budget set up. You got an Excel spreadsheet. But then you have the moment that I've had before where you go to the front door and you pick up that Amazon box. And you've never said it out loud, but you've thought to yourself, what's in this one again? Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you're getting nudged right now. You know what I mean? Like, sweetie, he's talking about you. That's it. You pick it up and you go, come on, you shake it like you're a 10-year-old at Christmas. You're like, oh yeah, I knew that. I knew it was this one. You believe a lot of things, but it's not until you follow through with it that things actually change. And our standard begins to shift because in the rest of our life, we're too smart for this. Come on, you know this. Our standard isn't just belief, it's action. It's action. I like to think about it this way, that unapplied truth is like unapplied paint. It doesn't change anything. You don't get to just go buy the paint and say, wow, doesn't the house look beautiful? No, you got to paint the walls. You got to do something with it. You have to apply the truth or else the standards get a little off balance. In 1999, NASA launched this program for a Mars climate orbiter. And its goal was exactly as the name suggests. It was going to go to Mars, it was going to orbit, and start to get readings about the climate of Mars. And so they spent $125 million. They brought in all people from all over the world to bring their knowledge and expertise to make sure this went well. They launched it, they set off fireworks, it was exciting, and it was heading straight for Mars. Until they double-checked the math, which you'd think they do before they launch it, but that's a different story. And they're double-checking some of the math, and they realized something, that a group, one small little group who were responsible for one little thruster in Colorado, they were using the English method of measuring when the rest of the world was using the metric system, and nobody converted it. And so wouldn't you know it, it was heading the right direction and just glanced off of Mars and went the other way. And it never orbited, and it was frustrated, and they lost this thing out, and it was all because they were using different standards. Let me just tell you, just for a minute, maybe for some of you, your faith might be heading the right direction because you believe the right things, and you agree with the right things, that's awesome, but those were never meant to be the standards. So your trajectory feels right, but for some reason, it's just not showing up. It's not making the difference you thought it would. I've been trying this for a while. You even went and got baptized. You did Starting Point. You did the things. You've tried to do some of it, but it doesn't feel like it's working. It's because you've settled. You've settled at agreeing and believing when that was never the standard. The standard was following, was taking your faith and going somewhere. In this next passage, man, I would never be audacious enough to say this out loud, but Jesus said it. So if you want to get mad at somebody, you get mad at him. Here's what Jesus had to say that I just thought, man, this is controversial, but here we go. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice, well, they're foolish. They're a foolish person. Now, I would never look you in the face and call you a fool, but Jesus will. So maybe for some of you, your faith has stopped at believing. Hasn't gone to following, and there's something bigger, there's something better at play. If you didn't like the first point, you're going to hate the second one. Here we go. Move beyond your comfort zone. You have to move beyond your comfort zone. You guys are smart people, and usually this is the part where Rusty, he can do this. He can get away with it. He could get up here and he would say, listen guys, that's why I've abandoned all comfort in my life. I live on a farm. You know what I mean? I wrestle sheep every day. I do these things in comfort. You got to walk away from it. I'm not Rusty. I love comfort. You put that on my LinkedIn profile. I am big on comfort. I will seize comfort. I will chase comfort. I love comfort. I love comfortable chairs. I love comfortable bed. I want a comfortable pillow. Anybody else? The back get all fussy when you don't. Hey, my pillow people who travel with a pillow. God's chosen people. Here we go. You get the point. You love comfort. And I love comfort too, but we all know this. Come on. Comfort, if you allow that to author the story of your life, won't create a story you want to tell. If you allow comfort to navigate every decision that you want in your life, it sounds nice, it sounds great, it's probably going to include some vacations and a lot of relaxation, but at the end of the day, that's not the story you want to tell. We want to get to a place, I'm not even talking about God's standards, I'm talking about your own standards for your life. You can set aside God's standards for a moment for your own standards. You want to tell a story that achieves something, that moves through something that had plan and purpose. Because we all know this. We don't go to our Kindle app or we don't go to Barnes & Noble, a bookstore, or anything like that, looking for leadership books. and check out things on comfort. Because you would never, if you want to be encouraged and inspired, you don't read titles like this. Imagine this title, Courageous Complacency. Nobody reads that. Nobody reads that and says, yeah, this is how I want to navigate my life. Here's the next one. Comfort, coddling, and catnaps, the pillars of excellence. Like what? No, you bring that to your boss, you're fired, get out of here. What's the next one? This is my favorite. Never leave the nest, why flying is overrated. Like, come on. You don't read those? Come on, they're funny to joke about, and I'm all for you should take all your vacation days that you can, you should rest, you should do all those things, but if comfort becomes the main navigator for your life, my fear is that you will write a story you never intended to write, that you chase something that was ultimately a pretty hollow victory, that you climbed to the top of that mountain, or I guess settled to the bottom of that valley, whatever you'd want to call it, and you got to a place that you're not really proud of, that you never intended to be. And that even though it's fun every night to come home and watch the same episode of The Office because it's comfortable and it's just comforting, and I get that, but for you guys, come on, maybe God had something more at plan. In fact, he did this to his disciples. He took them right out of their nest. In Luke chapter 9, we see this. When Jesus called the 12 together, he gave them power and authority. It's important to notice, power and authority to drive out all demons and cure disease. And he set them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. Because up until that point, Jesus has been the one doing all the miracles. Jesus has been one doing all the heavy lifting. They just kind of tag along and cheer him. Go, Jesus. You need a water? What do you need? Come on. I can do this. We can do this. Look, whatever you need, we're here to support you, but we're just here learning. He says, it's time to take the training wheels off. It's time for you to get to work. I know it's been comfortable to watch, but it's time for you to go. And Pastor Rusty talked about this a lot last week as maybe a next step that we can take to begin to serve other people. But maybe even beyond service, your next step means getting involved in a group this fall. It's outside of your comfort zone. Well, God, I got to go to somebody's house. It's uncomfortable. What am I going to do with my kids? Oh, there's childcare. They got rid of that excuse too. Like this, for us to re-engage. Well, then I have to admit that maybe everything's not perfect in my marriage, and we both haven't talked about it yet. We both feel it. We both know it, but at least we don't address it. It's better that way. You know what I mean? We don't talk about it. We just leave that there, and we don't want to talk about it. Maybe even for some of you, you're like, listen, my marriage is like a 7. What do I need? My marriage is great. We're good. We go on vacation. We're mostly happy with each other. We get in arguments, but we all do. Maybe this isn't an opportunity to resuscitate a marriage. It's a chance to take your marriage from a 7 to a 9. You know what I mean? But what it takes is getting outside of your comfort zone, sitting with other people and saying like, hey, you don't have it figured out either? Oh, good. We can all be in this together and see what Jesus would teach us along the way. Getting outside of your comfort zone can really begin to change everything. It did for the disciples, because in Luke chapter 9, we see, so they set out and went from village to village, proclaiming the good news and healing people everywhere. Let me tell you what, the people that are on the other side of the good news and the healing are really, really, really happy that the disciples got out of their comfort zone. They're really happy. They're so grateful that the disciples decided to get outside of their comfort zone because they got healed and they received good news because of it. Who is on the other side of you getting out of your comfort zone that will be so grateful that you did? And my guess is you're like me. You begin to tell yourself a narrative of why you can't, why you shouldn't. Man, if you knew how busy I was, if you knew what was going on, if you knew what I did in my past, if you knew I was disqualified, if you knew I don't know enough, maybe next time, once I go through a few things, once I go through a class, once I study a little bit more Bible, once I have things, then I can start doing some of these things. But the good news is that Jesus didn't send them out with a pocket full of dreams. He sent them out equipped and able. And it wasn't because of their education. We learned that already. It wasn't because of their training. We learned that already. It's because of what Jesus had done for them to begin with. So let me just encourage you. It's not because of your own capacity that I'm challenging you to get out of your comfort zone. It's because God can be trusted in that space. And sometimes it takes quieting the narrative in our head before we're able to find the confidence to do that. In the 1920s, there was this incredible audiologist. His name was Dr. Alfred Tomatis, and he had pioneered incredible things about how we interpreted sound, how our ears worked. He was really pioneering so many phenomenal things. And one day, it was almost like a Sherlock Holmes episode where this opera singer comes to him, challenged and frustrated because he was a world-renowned singer. He'd sung all these places. His range was unbelievable, but there was one note right towards the middle of his range that he could no longer sing. He's confused. He went to singing coaches. He went to trainers. He went to all these different things, and nobody could figure out why he couldn't sing this particular note. So he last-ditch effort, came to Dr. Tomatis and he said, can you help me understand this? So he did some studies, he did some tests. He realized when the opera singer was at full volume, he was singing at 140 decibels, which is the same as like a jet engine taking off next to you. And he made this revolutionary discovery that if we get this, not only does it explain how we hear, but I think it would explain a lot about our faith. He determined that he had deafened himself with his own voice. It was amazing. He was so loud. He was so boisterous. He was so loud. He had deafened himself with his own voice. And catch this. It's now called the Tomatis effect, that you are unable to reproduce something that you can't hear. So you're unable to reproduce a particular sound if you are unable to hear it. And since he had deafened himself to that particular note, he was unable to sing it. For some of you, you feel like, man, I am not able, I am not ready, and you have played yourself and you have deafened yourself to your own voice and narrative of why you can't pull it off. And maybe you just need to pause that soundtrack for a minute and allow God's voice to speak into the midst of it. God's voice to be able to meet you exactly there, to quiet your own voice just for a moment so you could hear his, so you could hear his encouragement, so you could hear his hope, so you could hear the zeal which he has for you. And once we figure that out, I'm telling you, everything could change. Here's the third one, is we choose to invest rather than observe. We choose to invest. If you want to be recognized as a Jesus follower, then you got to choose to invest rather than just observe. This is where things are going to get a little bit sticky, and this is where I'm going to find out if I'm ever going to get invited back. If not, we're going to swing at the ball hard. It's been a fun last time here with you. But for a lot of you, here's the thing. If you are new to faith, or if you are figuring out your faith and figuring out, hey, this is for me, this is a great church to sit and observe. You are more than welcome to that. You can remain anonymous. You can sit in the back. We would love to help you. Whenever your next step might be, we'd love to help you. You can definitely sit and observe. This next part's not for you. This is for those of us that want to try and follow Jesus with our life. We don't have it all figured out, but we want to try and figure it out. Come on. I'm inviting you off the benches. This is our chance to participate. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I'm a byproduct of people taking this seriously. Here's what we see in Matthew 28. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything that I commanded you. And surely I am with you to the very end of the age. I didn't grow up in church. My family didn't ever attend church, not even Christmas, Easter, none of that. And I had a friend just invited me. And of course I said, no, I'm not coming to your weird cult. And so you stop. And finally he drove to my house, picked me up from my house on a Sunday morning. Incredibly rude. I couldn't even watch football. So frustrated. And we drove to the church and I went, and wouldn't you know it, I was so fortunate that I didn't have the church experience that a lot of people end up having, where it's kind of off-putting and strange. It turns into Bible Jeopardy and everything that you're afraid of happening. But I was fortunate enough to walk into a church that looks a lot like LifePoint, a church that cares about people in an authentic and genuine way, that don't pretend to have it all together. Come on, Rusty's your lead pastor. Come on, we don't have it all together. He's a friend, that was a joke. But we all get to a place, come on, where it was real, it was authentic, where I could sit and ask honest questions, and people took their time rather than just observe and say like, hey, who's the new guy? Oh my gosh, what is he doing here? Oh my gosh, do you know any? They didn't do any of that. They welcomed me in as a place to begin to ask questions. Did my faith start on day one? Nope. It took me a while. It took me a while to warm up, but it was a safe place to figure that out, and it's all because people were willing not just to observe what's happening, but to participate, be a part of it. Because the guy took me out to lunch, even though he was busy and all that stuff, and answered my questions and sat with me when I was confused and frustrated. And in those moments is when I began to see God move in a real way. It's not in my notes. I should probably only stick to things that are in my notes, but I'm just going to say it anyway. We all know this to be true at a Seahawks game, that the loudest boos come from the cheapest seats. The loudest boos often come from the tippity-top seats where people are just fired up to be there, and they're just booing, and it's easy, and it's easy to boo from all the way up there. Boos rarely come from the sidelines because people are invested and they're ready to go. And even though things aren't perfect, they figure it out, they put their head down, and they get to work. And that's the kind of church that I love. This is why I love come speaking at LifePoint. Every time Rusty invites me to come out and speak, I get so excited because this is a church that chooses to invest rather than just observe. And when we do that, man, life change happens, baptisms happen. I mean, it's just hope comes to our community. We start to change the narrative of what it means to follow Jesus. Here's what we see Jesus say in John chapter 13. A new command I give you, love one another. And if you've been around church, that's not a new command, but it is a pretty tangible one. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciples. This is how you'll be recognized. If you demonstrate your political loyalty on social media, that's how people will know. I knew it was going to be quiet around this part of the message, so got to put a little something to make sure you guys are paying attention. Come on, that's not what it says. But some of you don't know your Bible well. You're like, that's why my Aunt Karen keeps going off on Facebook. It's just crazy. No, it's not in the Bible. Come on. By this, everyone will know my disciples. If you love one another, if you truly show up and care in an authentic, real, tangible way, that's how people will know you're my followers. That's how you'll be recognized. So if you love other people, what does that look like? Lance, give me a list of 10 things. I can't. You just go do it. And my guess is that you'll figure it out. It'll be clumsy, it'll be uncomfortable. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You'll have to do more than just believe. You'll have to follow. You'll have to trust. And it'll get messy, but if you do it, I promise you, it's addicting. I mean, it is like heroin times 10. Now, I've never tried heroin. I hear it's pretty addicting. But this stuff, man, it is addicting. To start to get in your plan and purpose for what God has for your life, I'm telling you, there's no better place to be. It's a sweet spot. And the last one, this is my last point, is to decide to trust even when doing it alone is safer. To decide to trust even when doing it alone is safer. This is where I'll set aside the jokes for a minute. I'm just going to be really honest for a minute. As a pastor and as a therapist, I get to sit with people in some of the greatest moments of their life when we celebrate and we see God work through something, we see a miracle take place at a wedding when the baby comes finally and you get to hold them for the first time. We do a little baby dedication. I love all those moments. But I also sit with people in some of the hardest moments of their life. I sit with people when the diagnosis comes. I sit with people when the marriage doesn't look like it's going to make it. I sit with people when anxiety has gotten out of control and they don't know what to do with it. I sit with people when depression has led them to think thoughts that they never thought they would think, led them to sleepless nights they never thought they would have, made them question things they never thought they would question. When frustration comes to the surface and anger is the only thing people can see, I sit with people in those moments. And what I've found from both experiences, and this is especially true about the one where we lose control of the world around us, when we do that, it's a natural response. You do it, I do it, we all do it. It's nothing really to bring shame to, but when things are out of control, we try and gather and grab as many things as we can control and hold on as tight as possible. That's what we do. It's an automatic response. In these last few years, I mean, with COVID and everything, political unrest, all this kind of stuff, it's not unprecedented. I don't like that word, but it is unusual for a lot of us. In unusual times, I don't know how it's hit each of you. We probably all have our own stories, but when that happens, you start to grab all the things you can control and hold on as tight as possible. It's a normal response because we want to control something. In a world that we can't control anything, when you can't control your spouse, when you can't control your kids, when you can't control your faith, when you can't control what God is doing, when you can't control your job, and you got laid off and you didn't think it was coming, you try and hold on to everything that you can. What's so paradoxical, what's so frustrating about our faith? As much as it's fun to talk about leaving your comfort zone, all those things are great to say on stage. Jesus invites us in those moments where we hold on for dear life to begin to loosen our grip, to begin to let go, and to trust him, even though doing it alone is safer. It is manageable. I've done it before, I can do it again. If you grit your teeth and just move forward, you can make it happen. And I think the world will continue to peddle us this rhetoric, and I get it. And if you have no other option, yeah, I would probably do that too. But the good news and the hope that we talk about here is a God that cares in those situations. Who doesn't just step aside and says, let's see if he's tough enough to make it through. That says, come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden, for I will give you rest. A Jesus who says things like, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. And I don't give as the world gives, hoping for something in return, waiting for you to behave correctly with an agenda or a motive in order to manipulate. That's not how Jesus gives. So do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. There are plenty of reasons to be troubled, and there's plenty of reasons to be afraid. But God invites us to something bigger. The other day I was in a rural area and I was stopped at a train track. I was watching a train go by, and to my left, to my right, there's fields. And I remember looking over and there was like a cow hanging there, and it's just chewing. What was interesting to me, I'd never noticed this before, but sometimes when you're stopped at a train, you got nothing else to do, you start to notice things. And the cow would just chew, and it would never even go down for more grass, but it would just keep chewing. And I got curious, and this is what you do. You Google something, you figure it out, and I learned something I never knew before. The cows, they do this thing called rumination, where they'll chew, swallow it, this is where it gets gross, throw it back up, chew some more. Swallow it, throw it back up, chew some more. Cycle goes on and on and on and on and on. Like, that's disgusting. And it's disgusting to see in like a manifested in a physical way, but it got me thinking, man, how often do I do that? In the middle of the night, when everyone's in bed, and I lay my head down on my pillow hoping to rest, I start chewing. The way I wish I would have said something, the way I wish I showed up, that behavior I wasn't proud of. Come on, why'd you get frustrated? She's 4 years old. She's 4. You're an adult. Why'd you get frustrated? You're better than that. Come on, you're supposed to be a pastor. Come on, you know better. Man, you didn't do enough. I don't know if you showed up in the right way. Man, when that person called you, why didn't you tell them off this way? Chew. Go to sleep eventually, maybe. Wake up the next morning, you swallow it and pretend like nothing happened. Till the next night. Throw it up again, you start chewing some more. Why? God, it just bugs me, it irks me. Man, what about my job? I should have told my boss off. Man, why didn't I do that? I should have showed up this way. I should have showed up this way. Chew. Let me just tell you this. You know this to be true. I don't even need to tell you this. It doesn't taste better the second time. It doesn't taste better the third time, the fourth time. For some of you, you've been ruminating on a past mistake, on a habit you're not proud of, and you just ruminate, and you think, if I can just try harder, if I can work better, if I can do it better next time, you chew. Well, Jesus says, spit it out. Enough's enough. Spit it out. Be done. Be over it. And not spit it out on your own strength, or not spit it out because it's not worth addressing, or you just want to avoid it or hide it. Hand it to me, and I will give you a sense of peace that transcends your understanding. Jesus says this, and this is going to be my last verse. It's John 16:33. I have told you all these things, not so that I can hold you to a higher standard or manipulate you or make you feel bad when you don't get it right. No. I told you everything so that you might have peace. In this world, you're guaranteed to have trouble. But there is a reason to take heart, because I have overcome the world. And so I tell you these things as a reminder that you might have peace. You can spit it out and move on. You want to be a recognizable Jesus follower? Spit it out. Move on. It's time for you to hold on to the peace that Jesus offers. That will stand out in our culture. That will stand out in your workplace. That will stand out in your marriage. Not only will it stand out to the people around you, but you will look at yourself in the mirror and recognize a Jesus follower. Would you do me a favor? Would you just set this stuff down around you? I'm going to pray for you really quick. Would you just bow your head and close your eyes? There's nothing especially spiritual about bowing your head and closing your eyes, but I do think it gives you a sense of privacy in a public place. In your world, you always have emails. You always have something, people bugging you for stuff. Your kids are taken care of. There's a moment between you and God. So take a deep breath. Be reminded of his peace. Be reminded that maybe the next step in your faith isn't an act of determination to get something else done, but rather an act of dependence to feel his peace for the first time, or maybe the first time in a really long time. Jesus, we know we have the propensity to mull over things, to stew and get stuck. And if we had the time to hear everyone's story, and well, we'd probably agree. Good news is that Jesus, you know every story offered to you in prayer, and every story we hold to ourselves thinking nobody would know. You meet us there, not with condemnation or frustration. You don't teach us these things so we'd feel bad, so we might have peace, knowing you're in your position and we are in ours. So today, We give you all of it. Not just our belief, not just that we agree with you and you had good teachings, but that we choose to follow you in faith, in the good times and the bad, when it's comfortable and when it's not. But Jesus, I pray that for each of us, we'd have a moment in our life where we look up and we realize we didn't get to where we are by ourselves. We got there because we followed you there. And it might be uncomfortable, might be challenging, might be frustrating, but Jesus, ultimately we know it's following you. So today I pray a prayer of peace for this church, for these people who are watching in the room and those who are watching online. Jesus, I just pray that you would bring your peace, bring your rest. It's not just because of the things that we do that will be recognized as your followers, but rather it's our dependence on you. Jesus, the faith that we have in uncertain times that will stand out like a light on a hill, that will stand out in a world that's just hungry for something to be hopeful for. So I pray for not only the wisdom to know where you want to meet us today, Jesus, but the courage to meet you there. We set things down and meet you today. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen and amen.